Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that money itself had quietly stopped working. Your salary still exists. The bills still arrive. The banks are still open. Yet something essential has broken. Something invisible but fundamental. And the entire system is now drifting toward collapse. Most people assume such a crisis could only happen in a modern economy, driven by complex markets, digital currencies, and global finance. But nearly 1,000 years ago, a scholar sitting in a candle-lit room in Baghdad warned that the destruction of money begins long before the economy collapses, long before governments panic, and long before citizens notice anything is wrong. His name was Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali, and his philosophy of money would predict, with chilling accuracy, many of the financial disasters the modern world still struggles to understand. The mystery is not that financial systems fail. The mystery is why they always fail in the same way. To understand why, we have to travel backward, not into stock exchanges or banking halls, but into the heart of the medieval Islamic world, when money was not just an economic tool, but a moral problem, a spiritual test, and a mirror reflecting the health of civilization itself. Al-Ghazali was born in the city of Tus, in the region of Khorasan, during a time of extraordinary change. The Islamic world was one of the most advanced economic civilizations on earth. Trade routes stretched from China to Spain. Gold dinars and silver dirhams flowed across deserts and oceans. Markets thrived in Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Cordoba. Merchants financed caravans, ships, and entire cities. Banks did not exist as we know them, but credit instruments, partnerships, and financial contracts were already sophisticated. On the surface, this was an age of prosperity. But beneath that surface, something had begun to rot. Political power was fragmenting. Military elites were draining treasuries. Court corruption was rising. And currency, once trusted as the lifeblood of trade, was slowly being abused. Al-Ghazali grew up watching this transformation. He studied law, theology, philosophy, politics, and economics, not as separate disciplines, but as one integrated system. To him, money was not simply metal, it was a social contract. It was the nervous system of civilization. And when money lost its integrity, everything else followed. His central idea was deceptively simple. Money, he argued, is not meant to be valued for itself. It is meant to be a pure medium of exchange, a tool that allows real goods and real labor to move smoothly through society. When money becomes an object of obsession, hoarding, manipulation, or speculation, it stops serving society and begins corrupting it. That insight may sound abstract, but its consequences were concrete and devastating. The origin of the crisis Al-Ghazali observed began quietly with rulers facing rising expenses. Wars were expensive. Palaces were expensive. Maintaining political loyalty was expensive, and tax revenues could not keep up. So leaders reached for the oldest financial trick in history. They debased the currency. Gold coins were mixed with cheaper metals. Silver content was reduced. New coins were minted that looked the same but contained less real value. At first, no one noticed. Markets continued. Salaries were paid. Prices remained stable. But then merchants began to realize that the money they were receiving no longer bought the same amount of goods. Trust began to weaken. Prices started to rise. Contracts became unstable. Trade slowed. And the economy entered a dangerous spiral, where each new debasement required another to cover the damage caused by the last. Al-Ghazali watched this process unfold and understood its deeper mechanism. He wrote that money is like a mirror that should reflect the real value of things without distortion. When rulers manipulate money for short-term gain, they shatter that mirror. The distortion spreads everywhere. The rise of this crisis was not sudden. It took years, then decades. Scholars debated, merchants complained, farmers struggled. The poor suffered first. The elite protected themselves with assets, land, and influence. Meanwhile, the currency continued to erode. Al-Ghazali warned that when money is corrupted, injustice becomes systemic. The honest are punished, the dishonest are rewarded, and society slowly reorganizes around deception. Eventually, the breaking point arrived. Markets froze, trade routes weakened, political legitimacy crumbled, social unrest followed. What began as a monetary problem became a civilizational one. Empires that had dominated continents found themselves unable to stabilize their own economies. After the collapse, rulers attempted failed fixes. New coins were issued, harsh regulations were imposed, price controls were enforced, hoarders were punished. None of it worked, because the root cause remained untouched. Money had lost its moral foundation. Al-Ghazali's genius was not in describing the symptoms, but in diagnosing the disease. He argued that money is not simply an economic tool, it is an ethical institution. It requires trust, restraint, justice, and humility. Without these, no financial system can survive. What makes this story terrifying is how perfectly it mirrors the modern world. Today's currencies are no longer metal, but the pattern remains unchanged. Governments accumulate debt beyond their ability to repay. Political pressure demands constant spending. Instead of debasing coins, modern states expand money supply. Instead of reducing silver content, they reduce purchasing power through inflation. The mechanism is identical. The result is identical. In the last century alone, dozens of national currencies have collapsed. Hyperinflation has destroyed entire societies in Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina, and beyond. In every case, leaders promised stability, implemented temporary solutions, delayed real reform, and ultimately destroyed the trust that makes money function at all. Shocking data reveals that over the last half-century, the purchasing power of the world's major currencies has declined by more than 90%. The average citizen works harder, saves more, yet owns less. Debt has reached levels once considered impossible. The global financial system now rests on promises that cannot mathematically be fulfilled. And here is the most disturbing parallel of all. Speculation has replaced production. Just as Al-Ghazali warned, money is now treated as a commodity itself, rather than a medium of exchange. Vast fortunes are made without producing goods or services, purely by manipulating symbols on screens. Meanwhile, real workers struggle to afford food and shelter. The same moral inversion he described has returned. The honest lose. The dishonest win. Society reorganizes around distortion. We are living inside Al-Ghazali's prophecy. He warned that when money becomes an end rather than a means, when it is hoarded, manipulated, or worshipped, it corrodes the soul of civilization. No technology, no policy, and no regulation can fix that unless the underlying philosophy of money is restored. And so the question becomes uncomfortable. Are we approaching another breaking point? History suggests the pattern is unavoidable when lessons are ignored. Every civilization that treated money as a tool of power rather than a trust eventually collapsed under its own weight. The Islamic world of Al-Ghazali's time, the Roman Empire before it, the European kingdoms of the late medieval period, the financial empires of the modern age. They all followed the same curve. Origin, instability. Rise through discipline. Breaking point through manipulation. Fallout through collapse. And failed fixes through denial. Which brings us to the final lesson. The first takeaway is that money is never neutral. It shapes behavior, rewards certain values, and punishes others. A corrupted currency creates a corrupted society. The second takeaway is that financial collapse does not begin with markets. It begins with ideas. When leaders and citizens abandon restraint, integrity, and responsibility, the economy merely reflects that choice. The third takeaway is that every generation believes it is immune to history. Every generation is wrong. Al-Ghazali's warning still echoes across centuries. When money loses its soul, civilizations lose their future. And the open question we must confront is this: are we willing to change our philosophy of money before the system forces that change upon us? If you want to understand the forces shaping your world, your savings, and your future, then this story is not ancient history. It is the blueprint of the present. If this video gave you a new lens on money and civilization, subscribe for more deep stories that reveal the hidden patterns of history, economics, and power. The past is not behind us. It is quietly building the world we are about to inherit.